Okay, hey everybody, it's Three Monkeys here with the continuation of the Quick Hits 78 to 84 board build. Last we were together, we were just about to wire up the audio path. And as you can see, the audio path is all done. Everything's working great. We used obviously the Three Monkeys Solderless system. Very low profile, lowest profile on the market, allowing us to get very close together with our pedals. The formable cable really came in handy, as when you bend it, it stays in place. So when you're tucking your cables down, they really stay where you want them. I was giving you a couple of tips on how we like to route the signal path and how we like to route from our power supply to each of the pedals to make everything nice and neat. And we were discussing the audio path last time, and I changed a couple of things which I thought would make more sense. And I kind of want to key you in on that. You see, in an earlier videos in this series, we were discussing the construction of this loop box over here. And how the loop box works is it allows you to switch in and out either one pedal or groups of pedals that are combined in a order. So from input to output, you can go through these 5 selections, each of which connected to something else. And I decided to make things a little bit, let's say, more sensible for the typical way that pedals should be sort of organized together as they go from your guitar to the amplifier. It wasn't really a requirement for what I wanted to do, but I figured this would open up more possibilities for me. So I'll go over this kind of the signal chain that we've got. So the entry point from the guitars into this Boss GE10, this vintage unit, that can be switched in and out. But we're mainly interested in having it on all the time due to the buffer that's in there, which is really nice, which helps us get over the noise floor of some of these vintage pedals, especially the flangers and the 6-band EQ, to keep everything nice and quiet. I mean, having a buffer in front of these pedals really makes a difference. So this buffer is not part of the loop box. This EQ is the entry point, and then the signal leaves the EQ and travels over to the loop box. So this is on. The buffer is always in line whenever you're using this pedal board. Okay, so the next thing we wanted to do is where would the signal travel to next? So I figured logically put it into the next EQ. Now, this is a vintage unit as well that I modified with a DC port and a true bypass. You don't really need that anymore, as it's going to be on all the time and switched in and out with this switch right here. And as we stated before, the buffer in this will really cut down on the noise of the 6-band. And anybody that's used one of these units knows they sound great, but boy, do they make a lot of noise. But that buffer really cuts down on that. So it'll go from this EQ to being able to switch in another EQ. From there, we're going into a chorus unit, which is this EVH chorus, which is really nice sounding. Then you'll have the ability to go into what I call in the red box, which is a flanger, phase 90, an octave, as well as this was basically a homemade EP boost or Echoplex boost. And I've described sort of how this works before. It's a combination of latching and momentary switches, which allows me to bring in this flanger or phase 90 very quickly in and out without having to double tap. So it's just pressing and it's in, releasing, it's out. Same thing with here for the phase 90 with 2 trim pots, which allow for the units which are on all the time to actually be blended into the signal path in a sort of mix with low wetness, which gives me the ability to have the phaser on sort of at a 20%, 30%, whatever I'm looking for, to add some interesting sort of color to the sound as well as the flanger. It could also be turned all the way down, and you won't hear those in the background at all, and the phaser will just come on when you press down on the momentaries. The octave is in just a passive loop right here. That can be brought in and out for solos. It then goes into the EP, which is just operated by, if you want it in or out, by this foot switch. But I usually just leave it on all the time because it's more of a coloration than it is a boost, in my opinion. The next place it would go to is the flanger. Okay, and then the final would be the 2 echoplexes, which is kind of the way that you would set up if you were having, let's say, your pedals on the floor. You would want your sort of your EQs up front, then some of your choruses, flange, harmonies, phasers, followed by finally your echoes, right, and then into your amplifier. So that's what we got going on here. And what I also wanted to key in on were these red buttons, which are kind of cool. And what they actually are, and I ripped one off, and I'll put it back on tonight so I could show you what it is. And it's, it's kind of goofy, but it really works well, and they look really cool. It's actually a wooden drawer pull that you can get at Home Depot or Lowe's in the hardware aisle. And these are actually maple. And if you get yourself some red epoxy paint and spray it on there, it's basically becomes like a plastic coating when you're using the epoxy paint, and it won't come off, and for all intents and purposes it looks and functions just like plastic. I drill out the back with a 3/8 inch Forstner bit to a depth. Grab yourself a little sandpaper and scuff up your foot switch here, the metal part there. Put your epoxy in your hole. You can see that kind of thing right there. It's got the epoxy from where I ripped it off last time. But put your epoxy in there, smear it around in there. Maybe smear a little bit on the switch itself too. That'll help with it staying there. Let me see if I can get that in there a little bit better. Yeah, there we go. You can smear a little epoxy on there, and just put it on and let it sit overnight, and that'll bond up really great. All right, so we've basically showed you everything there is to putting this together, and I guess the final thing will be how does it sound? And the next video will have a different camera setup, which will be much higher definition, better quality than just this quick hit sort of deal that I'm doing on my laptop. And it'll have some good audio as well, so you can really hear how all this sounds. And being that there's so much cable and so much routing on here, and how quiet it really is and how good it actually sounds with these cables. They have a very fat center conductor and are very well shielded. In fact, the center conductor is the thickest of any of the solderless products on the market by quite a margin. And if you want to check us out and take a closer look at our products, we're at 3 Monkeys DC Solderless or 3monkeyssolderless.com. And you can check us out there. So I hope some of this was interesting, and I look forward to being with you next time when we'll hear this thing. So thanks for watching, and have a good day.